Hello, I'm Marcy Anderson, and I'm going to be talking to you about the thinking classroom and why we need to make a change. Old school was very different from the new thinking classroom. In the old school days, teachers practiced preaching at the front of the room and telling students what they need to know. In the thinking classroom, the teacher provides deep, critical questions for the students to think and synthesize and better understand the topics and understand what they're learning. Our world is rapidly changing day by day. It's difficult to keep up with the changes in this technological world. One minute, an amazing new advancement has been developed, and the next it becomes obsolete because something even better has been created. With these changes comes the need for new creative jobs. Companies today are not just looking for workers. They are looking for someone with innovation, leadership, problem solving, and critical thinking skills. Businesses are looking for someone to help make them big money. With this in mind, it's time for the educational world to make a change. Students need to be taught how to think critically and solve problems. In the traditional classroom, teachers would stand at the front of the room and tell students what they need to know. This led to drill and kill and memorization methods. These methods of teaching will not foster creativity or critical thinking skills required in today's society. Students do not retain, transfer, and understand knowledge as well as they should when we fail to engage them in higher order thinking. In order to develop these thinking skills in students, educators must move to educate children in a thinking classroom. Standardized tests are changing to audit students' application of knowledge. New standards are also listing critical and creative thinking skills. Studying facts in the traditional way does not foster thinking skills. It causes students to memorize briefly for the test, and the subject is never truly learned. We must teach our students these skills to prepare them for their future. The thinking classroom looks very different than a classroom you would have seen 20 years ago. The teachers need to be willing to adapt their teaching style. With the advancement of technology, required job skills are changing. Students should be analyzing and making connections in their learning. To promote a thinking classroom, the students are collaborating and actively engaged while the teacher acts as a facilitator. Students become thinkers and problem solvers. As a facilitator, I will ask my students deeper questions to facilitate their learning. I'm going to use critical thinking questions and open-ended questions. And one of my favorite questions that Richard discusses in his book, Making Thinking Visible, is the question, what makes you say that? And I will be sure to listen to my students' responses because students need to feel that what they have to say is important. Provided a map activity for my students to list all of the parts that they could find on a map in groups. As they listed them afterwards, they were to tell me the purposes for all of those parts. This was a great way for students to synthesize the information on their own and come up with their own conclusions instead of me telling them about the symbols and the map key and the map grid. Another activity I did with all of the second grade in our school for Earth Day is we listed all of the ways that we could think of how we could help make our Earth a better place. I was surprised to see how far my class had come in regards to how well they worked together in a group as I compared them to other groups who just simply passed the paper around and wrote down the information instead of working as a team. Here's an example of my students working through a math problem together as a team, and later on continue to debate with another group. And you can hear how noisy it is in my class, but I was very happy to hear that everybody in class was discussing math. order to prepare our students for the future, they need to learn to think. The old ways of shooting information at students and expecting them to remember it is not preparing them for the future world of innovation.